Hello, everybody. Good morning, everybody. It's good morning where you are, and it's good evening in Warsaw. It's a great pleasure and honor to be invited to speak to you today. I will now share my screen, and hopefully you'll see my presentation in a moment. And and I will be talking about an attempt to revitalize and make more visible contemporary Jewish art in Poland. But I will start by introducing myself very briefly. Shirel did that wonderfully, and there's not very much to add. I just wanted to say that I come to this topic as a person who is interested in connecting and working at the intersection of art, academia, and activism. And I've been always interested in the ways in which Jewish history, Jewish heritage is being presented, narrated, taken care for in Poland by Jews and non-Jews, and how arts and various forms of activism or artivism can help us to take care for this heritage in more meaningful ways. So I'm interested in stories, and I'm genuinely interested in in the past, what we inherit from the past, but I'm really interested in that for the sake of thinking about the present and the future. So that's where I come from, and I'm an anthropologist. And as Shirel has already mentioned, I also have a privilege of being a president of the Zapomniane Foundation that is dealing with marking, commemorating uncommemorated burial sites of the Holocaust victims. It's a Jewish organization that originates from the Office of Chief Rabbi of Poland. I won't be talking about this today, but it also is important because we also in the foundation use arts and invite artists to help us find meaningful ways of taking care for that heritage and making the memory of the Holocaust, meaningful and vivid in contemporary Poland and beyond. But today I want to focus on something slightly different, although it is interconnected, and tell you a little bit about the project that has been fascinating me actually since the very beginning. It's a project that is called Kultur-Lige, and it's a network of contemporary Polish Jewish artists in Poland. So it's a network that started not so long ago and has been developing really quickly and wonderfully to much of, I think, a surprise, as a surprise, both for myself as a person who was one of the people behind bringing this network to life, and the co-organizers. So the mission of the network is to support, promote, and enhance the visibility of contemporary Polish Jewish artists and their work. So that's how we define what the network is for and how it started. It started December 2023. It started as a part of a larger meeting, of a larger conference that was focused on art, activism, and memory. And I'm very glad that Barbara Kirschenblatt-Gimblett was already mentioned today, because it began as a collaboration between my organization, my foundation, the POLIN Museum, so the professional baby of Barbara Kirschenblatt-Gimblett, the wonderful Museum of the History of Polish Jews in Warsaw, and FestivALT, a Jewish arts and activism collective based in Krakow, but very much doing also national scale and international work. So we were planning this event, this conference on art, activism, and memory, and it was the end of last year, also after the 7th of October. And we realized that as part of this conference, what we thought is a good idea is to create a safe space for Jewish artists living in Poland, creating in Poland, working in Poland, to give them space to interact with each other, to connect, to talk, because we were guessing this might be a need that some of them might be sharing, and it also was a need in many of us. So we decided to organize this first gathering as 3 institutions, me representing the foundation, Eva Homicka in the middle representing the POLIN Museum of the History of Polish Jews, and Magda Rubenfeld on the right representing FestivALT, Jewish Arts and Activists Collective. And we were really surprised by the response to the open call we sent out. We identified some people that we we want to invite. And then in a snowball manner, they started suggesting another name that we should also put on the list. So we ended up organizing this within the framework of a larger project that is very much heritage related, that is focused on fostering a practice-based culture of remembrance using civic activism, academia, arts, and urbanism. And so this was a larger framework for that meeting. That is also part of an Engaged Memory Consortium, which is a consortium of organizations that was also co-founded by me, representing the foundation, FestivALT, and one other Jewish organization from Poland, kind of still a young organization, Urban Memory Foundation from Wrocław, former German city of Breslau. So within this framework, there is already a lot of collaboration happening as a consortium, as a growing consortium of organizations. So the partnership with the POLIN Museum was a natural decision, and organizing this safe space for Jewish artists in Poland seemed like an important thing to do, especially given the context, and also autumn last year. And the name Kultur-Lige was actually inspired by a historical organization. It was an organization, it translates into cultural league. It was a secular socialist organization, Jewish organization, established in Kiev in the early 20th century, that was dedicated to promoting Jewish and Yiddish culture and art in Eastern Europe and Russia. So it was a project that was indigenous to East Central Europe. And the name, Magda Rubenfeld, one of the co-organizers, suggested the name. She was very inspired by this idea of like multiple artists representing multiple backgrounds and art disciplines coming together to do something together. And the original Kultur-Lige was, as I said, aimed to promote Yiddish and Jewish contemporary culture back then. So we realized after doing this first meeting that it was first such initiative in the post-war Poland. So it was for the first time that actually anybody tried to create a space for Jewish artists in Poland to connect. And there were obviously many other initiatives and organizations, but not a network in itself. And we ended up inviting around 100 artists. And I have to tell you that when we began creating that list, I was assuming that we're gonna have like 25, maybe 30 names on the list. We ended up with a list of 100 names. And around 30 people attended the first gathering and subsequent gathering. It's not the same 30 people, just we have organized already 3 gatherings of the network, and each and every one of them is attended by more or less 30 people. Some people attend, just one, and then they come back to the third one, and so on and so forth. This is also related to where we organize it and whether people have time, but they stay engaged. There was a lot of space for networking. So many of these people didn't know each other. So it was a great opportunity for them to get to know each other, to network, but also to present their work. There was space for them to present what they are working on, how they work, how they engage with topics related to Jewish art, Jewish history, identity, and so on and so forth. And also, a space for discussions and discussing various questions that the participants, the members of the network, they bring to these gatherings, to this network. And there was the first gathering happened around Hanukkah, so it was also a space for celebrating together, just being together and spending joyful time together. Also experiencing some art and some music. This is a phenomenal Polish jazz musician, Mikołaj Trzaska, but also to experience some performances or alternative guided tours. So what we already tried to do in this first meeting is not only to create the space for dialogue, for networking, for being together, but also to immerse the participants of the network into various forms of art or culture that is available, and this was happening at the POLIN Museum of the History of Polish Jews. So we have organized 3 meetings so far. First one in Warsaw that I already mentioned last year, and then 2 more in Wrocław, former city of Breslau, and Warsaw this year. And what we realized is that demand for these meetings is really high. When we asked during the first meeting what is needed, what the artists would love to get, they immediately said, we want such meetings. So we are committed to keep organizing them at least twice or three times a year. And during the second meeting that happened in Wrocław, it was accompanying the exhibition, opening of an exhibition. I'm going to mention it in a moment. But also we included some additional components to the program, for example, a critical Torah reading workshop, because we already knew from the artists that there is a need in some of them, in many of them, to find new ways, to be offered new ways of engaging with Jewish culture, with Jewish tradition, with traditional Jewish texts. So we were also trying to accommodate this need. And the meeting was also part of a big opening of an exhibition in Wrocław, Putting Things Back, Jewish Breslauers and Their Objects, co-organized by our partner organization, Urban Memory Foundation, in collaboration with the descendants of Jews from Breslau who managed to escape the city before the Holocaust. So the objects in the exhibition were brought by descendants of the families who used to live in Breslau. So it was also, the exhibition was a context and a food for thought and discussion for this network meeting. And I mentioned we organized 3 meetings. So what was also possible within less than a year was a first group exhibition of artists from the network. And it was possible as part of a POLIN Museum 10th anniversary. The museum celebrated 10 years this autumn. So it was an opportunity to publish an open call that was circulated within the network so that artists can propose artwork to be presented in the space of a POLIN Museum. So it's been a year, and I feel a lot has happened. And the entire group that became engaged stayed engaged, and even an exhibition was possible to be put together in this short amount of time. So the exhibition was part of an official celebrations of the 10th anniversary of the POLIN Museum. That was actually, the weekend, the weekend anniversary weekend. Was actually attended, like the attendance was very high, and it was around 10,000 people who actually came through the door and saw the events and the exhibition. So again, for such a young project as the network is, it was a great opportunity for the visibility of the artists. And you can see some pictures of this rotating gallery here. I will get back to it. But I wanted to also tell you a little bit more about the network itself. So it consists of artists representing various disciplines, like visual artists, performers, theater artists, composers, musicians. And most of them are Polish Jews who were born and raised in Poland. However, the network also includes individuals from abroad who decided to reconnect with Poland, which is in all the cases the country of their roots or the origin of their ancestors, and decided to make it their home. And yeah, there are members of the network who moved to Poland to reconnect with the country, with the land, with the heritage, with the region, with the geography here. So we have both Polish and English speaking and Russian speaking and other languages speaking members of the network. So it's a combination of people coming from different places. And also it spans, artists raised with a very strong Jewish identity. So for example, people who attended Jewish schools or received Jewish education, and people who are at very various stages of discovering their heritage and their identity. And it's also like people who are already well established in the Polish art scene, and there are new and emerging voices. And what is probably most interesting for me, it's also that we are working with artists of different ages. So I think one of the youngest members of the network are in their early 20s, while our, I think, oldest member of the network is 83. So it's also intergenerational. And we really appreciate that, and we think it really brings a lot of important qualities to these meetings. And it reflects a very wide spectrum of perspectives and experiences. And then the diversity extends even further because we have artists with mixed ethnic identities, such as an artist, Hannah Umeda, who has Polish, Jewish, Japanese roots. And we also have artists who explore gender diversity in their work and in their practice. So as you can see, this network is a very dynamic and inclusive form of, or like a format, a platform, reflecting the multifaceted nature of contemporary Polish Jewish culture. And this is something that we are really interested in fostering, supporting, and developing further. And I will just give you a few examples of who these people in the networks are. And then afterwards, I will also look into a few examples of the artworks that were part of this group exhibition. So one of the artists is Helena Czernek, and she's an artist working with jewelry, with sculpture, with casting. She's also the person who created her own brand of Judaica, made and created in Poland. Very beautiful. It's called Mi POLIN. And these are beautiful Judaica objects that she designs and creates in her studio. But she also has this amazing project that she travels across Poland and Ukraine looking for mezuzot traces indoors, and then she casts them to make new mezuzot for new Jewish homes. And every mezuzot is coming with a story of the original place from which where the cast was made. So it's a beautiful project that, you know, engages arts and crafts, and also like engages with the past, but also very much looking into the present and the future, because these are new mezuzot that can be installed in new Jewish homes. There is Nathan Krysk, who is a young sculptor and musician. And one of his projects, and I'm only mentioning, you know, all these people, these amazing people, they have many amazing projects. I'm just mentioning one. So one of his recent projects is a music project called Robert Devil. It's a reinterpretation of an old opera by a composer called Meyerbeer, that was criticized at some point in Germany as on the basis of like anti-Semitic stereotypes. So Nathan took this historical opera and he worked with it in order to rethink it and transform it into a contemporary musical piece that also engages performance, because it's performed with as a live music with a performer, a dancer, also being part of that show. There is Michael Rubenfeld, who is originally from Canada, but his family came from Poland. He's now based in Krakow. He's an actor and a performing artist. And just to give you an example, one of his artworks was a theater play, We Keep Coming Back, that was exploring his own family history. And it was performed by himself and his mother on scene. And his mother is not an actress. So it was they performed together with both of them with other actors on stage, exploring and vivisecting their family story. And it was performed in Poland. So also mother came to Poland to perform it. It was a very powerful piece. There is also Betty Q, and this is the person who basically introduced burlesque to Poland. And she also uses burlesque to engage with Jewish topic, because she also is very involved in Jewish education. So she uses her performing arts toolbox to discuss certain topics, for example, relationships with like oneself's relationships with their own body, and how we should treat our bodies also in the perspective of the Jewish tradition. So, and this was part of a Jewish arts and activism festival in Krakow. But there is also Mira Żelechower-Aleksium, who is this is the person I already mentioned. She's 83 years old. She's an amazing painter, and she creates these wonderful paintings, also inspired by traditional texts, by Jewish literature created in East Central Europe, and engaging with also the imaginary of Jewish culture. So as you can see already, we have artists representing, as I mentioned, various disciplines, working with different tools. And these are only, you know, a couple of names that that I just shared with you. And some of them were presented in this within this framework of the rotating gallery. And what is also important is the entire anniversary of the POLIN Museum was happening under the slogan "We are here." So it was also important that within, like, while celebrating the anniversary of the museum is not only focused on the history, it is a historical museum, it's a museum of the history of Polish Jews, but it also is engaging with a live, vibrant Jewish culture happening in Poland today. The exhibition was curated by Joanna Fikus and Ewa Chomicka. Both are in the picture here, Ewa on the left, Joanna on the right. Ewa is the person who runs Laboratory of Museum Practices at the POLIN Museum, and Joanna is head of exhibitions at POLIN. I had a pleasure and a privilege of being a consultant for this exhibition together with my colleague Magda Rubenfeld. And the idea behind this gallery was that while the museum is celebrating the 10th anniversary, it was also a good time to open this vibrant polyphonic space for presenting the contemporary voices of artists who identify as Polish Jews. And the slogan "We are here" are the literally words spoken by Marian Turski, a Holocaust survivor, on behalf of the Jews living in Poland today. And it's a reminder not only of a shared history, but also like drawing attention to the intercultural here and now and the reality of Poland today. And I will share a little bit about who were the artists presented in the gallery, and then I will go more into detail into a few selected artworks. So the gallery worked in a way that starting in July, throughout the summer, each work was presented separately. So every artist had the gallery space for themselves individually for like a solo show for some time. And then it was one after another. And then for the anniversary, the exhibition reopened as a group show. So first, you know, the audience could see the artworks one by one, and then it was presented as a group show, and it's still being presented in the museum, and it's gonna be lasting until next Sunday. So one of the artists who was presenting her work in the gallery was Julie Weiss. She's an artist from the US, but also she came to Poland some time ago already as part of her Fulbright scholarship, and she decided to stay and engage with the heritage and the history and the landscape here in Poland. And her work was a performance entitled "Holy Names for Our Dybuk." She was inspired in exploring the idea of the Dybuk, but also in relationship to the very geography of East Central Europe. So it was a performance, and in a group show, it's presented as an installation. Another artist was Jewish, Polish, Japanese artist Hanna Umeda, and she presented an installation entitled "Your Body is a Nest." And it was a work exploring the topics of violence, including sexual violence. It was an installation with like a visual projection and an audio, a meditative audio that the audience could listen to, and music. And it is presented as an installation in the group show in the gallery. And there was a work by Gabi von Seltmann. She presented two works. Both are like multimedia works, and I'm gonna focus on one to tell you very briefly what it's about. Gabi is a person who has been a driving force behind a very beautiful commemorative work of a site where a great synagogue in Warsaw used to stand. The synagogue is no longer there because it was destroyed as a final act of the destruction of the Warsaw Ghetto by the Nazis. And Gabi is the person who proposed that the synagogue is projected onto the contemporary urban tissue in Warsaw, exactly in the place where the synagogue used to stand. So it's a multimedia projection onto a glass building, onto a glass skyscraper standing in Poland. And in the museum, for the rotating gallery, she was presenting as an installation various projections of the synagogue that were happening over the year, because she was the driving force behind this happening, like as an annual celebration and commemoration of the synagogue. And there's an artist, Dominika Laster. She is a person that is mostly doing like research in performing arts and also a performer, and she created this very also moving and beautiful work in tent, working with the idea of radical hospitality. She created a tent in the museum, and she was inviting audience to the tent, and she was physically there as a performer, washing their feet, but also having conversations with them. And then the work is presented as an installation and as a performance in the group show. There is an artist, Mike Herzberg, who is also a craftsman, and he created the work A Mezuzah of the Future. And it was a work, he actually installed the actual door in the museum space with a mezuzah that he designed. And the basis for the project was his own family history, and also looking for ways in which we can go from the darkness to the light and imagining a future. And there was Kamila Czosnik, who is a performing arts artist, and she created a work called Nowhere. It was a performance dealing with the difficult emotions of confusion and the sense of feeling lost, and dealing with that. So that was a performance that was presented in the gallery. And I want to go now a little bit deeper into several works that are also there. One of them is a work by Zofia Janina Borysiewicz. She designs fonts. She's a typographer, and she worked a lot with typography in both Polish and Hebrew. She is a person who created a very interesting project called Chaim Aviva. So she got interested in a very popular in Israel typeface, a font called Chaim, that was actually designed by a designer, Polish Jewish designer, pre-war, pre-Second World War, Jan Levit. And what Zofia did, she realized that this font has only its Hebrew version. So she decided to design a Polish version of that same font. And she called that font, the Polish font, Aviva. So to the original Chaim, she designed this Latin Polish font, Aviva. And also it was a way to reconnect these two traditions, these two languages, these two places, these two cultures together. And for the exhibition, she created this work that you can see behind her. And also on the wall, you can see how it looked in the museum when it was a solo show. She was fascinated by multilingual posters and ephemeral prints from pre-war Poland, because there were many multilingual, mostly Yiddish and Polish posters. So she collected a lot of them. And these were, ephemeral prints advertising theater events or literary events or cultural, events, art shows. So she was exploring the relationships between two languages in a format like a poster, and also, looking into how these languages, but also these cultures existed next to each other. So, what's the order of things, how they are designed, what information, is communicated in what way in both languages. So she collected a lot of these posters. She presented these historical posters, but she also designed her own new posters, also bilingual, trying to like make a gesture like continuing this tradition. And she created in the museum space a palimpsest of these historical and contemporary posters, and all of them working with both languages. So trying to explore the intersection, the interconnectedness, but also the separation of two languages. And in her contemporary posters, she also used a very contemporary design, as if we were imagining, that this is the reality in which we still exist, right? So what if, right? What if? And then how would these posters look today? So that was also like sort of like playing with potential history or like alternative history. And it was a literal palimpsest in the museum. So, parts of the old posters were visible through the new posters. As you can see, there's stick one on top of the other. So that was the reprint, the work by Zofia Borysiewicz. Another work was created by Alex Roth. He's an artist based in Krakow, but born in London, with Polish, like Jewish of Polish descent. And he created a work called Dispossessed. And it was an interesting work in a sense that it was engaging with actual objects that are in the POLIN Museum collection. And these are very troubling objects. These are musical instruments created out of desecrated Torah scrolls during the Holocaust. There are objects like that in the collection of the POLIN Museum. And first and foremost, I have to mention that these objects are, in the collection because the decision was being made and was consulted with the chief rabbi of Poland. These are normally the desecrated Torah scrolls would be buried, but in this case, after the consultation with the rabbi, it was decided that they are very important testimony to the violence and atrocities of the Holocaust. That's why they are in the museum collection, but they are very rarely exhibited. And Alex got to know about these objects as part of a conference that actually was an event that started the network, the conference last December, I mentioned, because the objects were discussed by one of the people dealing with the collection in the POLIN Museum. So Alex wanted to engage with these objects, these very problematic, troubling objects. And he decided to create music. He's a musician, but it was clear that he won't be playing these objects, right? And also it was the entire project of Alex was consulted with the rabbi. So he wasn't to be playing these instruments, but what he did, he used in a very like obeying all the protocols, also consulted with the rabbi, without touching directly the object. He recorded ambient sounds, just like without touching them, just we can say like almost the silence around the object. So he recorded that, and then he transformed these sounds, like using electronic tools, and created a musical piece that he said he intended to be a burial chamber for these objects. So in a way, he used artistic means to rebury or to bury these objects with his musical piece, and the musical piece was part of an installation. So as you can see, the objects themselves were displayed with all the explanations, what they are, why they're in the collection, how they were, what happened, what they are a result of. And then Alex's piece was the musical piece, but also a video documenting how delicately and how appropriately he handled the object. Basically, the video of like him recording it carefully, the sound around the object and inside the object. So that was the work called Dispossessed. And on a very different note, this one of the projects presented there was a project by Maria K. Maria K is a singer and an artist doing electronic music, singing and creating in Yiddish. And she's creating like a very entertaining, very empowering, very light music. She writes her own songs, composes her own songs, and she uses Yiddish to express her emotions, her different stories that she wants to tell with the use of that music. Most of her albums are multilingual, so she uses English, Polish, and Yiddish in her artistic expression. And what is also interesting is she uses old Jewish Yiddish songs, but also she oftentimes what she does is she updates them in a way that introduces more female perspective to the songs. So it's also a feminist work. And she, in the gallery, the work Universum was a three multimedia presentations of her musical and visual works. As you can see, it was like videos and music, and also she did a performance, a music performance, as part of the gallery. So it's a very interesting case of like a very secular, very contemporary Jewish music created in Poland in Yiddish. And yeah, you can see one more example here. That was like a large projection on the wall of the museum. So that's Maria K. Yeah, and that's one more example. And what I also wanted to mention is that as part of the network, we are now creating a series of short documentary films about selected artists from the network. And this is being produced by Jewish Arts and Activist Collective from Krakow called FestivALT, who is one of the co-founders of the network. But obviously, I'm talking about the network, and this is an amazing resource, an amazing group of people. But there's even more to discover when it comes to Jewish arts in Poland, because there are also artists who are not that active within the network itself, who are also very prominent and important voices in Poland. And I will mention just two names. So one of them is Dr. Natalia Romik, who is an artist, a curator, an architect, and a researcher. And she has been working and doing curatorial projects at the POLIN Museum in Warsaw, but also in many other places. And she's a person behind many important projects exploring Jewish heritage using contemporary art. And I will just mention one project that she did, and I was privileged to be a part of. Hideouts, the Architecture of Survival. We were doing research for this project together. We visited 9 materially preserved Jewish hideouts, wartime Jewish hideouts on the territory of contemporary Poland and Ukraine. And then Natalia, in her artistic gestures, she made casts, one-to-one casts of parts of these hideouts, and she transformed them into sculptures that you can see in this picture. And these sculptures, 9 sculptures from 9 different hideouts that are still preserved materially today in contemporary Poland and Ukraine, were accompanied by all the research materials that we were able to gather while doing this research that lasted for over 3 years. And there is also a book about that I highly recommend. It was published in English while the exhibition was first presented in Warsaw, then in another Polish city of Szczecin, and then it was presented in Frankfurt in the Jewish Museum, and accompanied by this publication in English and in German. And another artist and also a friend is Susanna Herzberg, who is a visual artist, a painter, a performer, and she engages with historical topics, but also like bringing back or bringing to the forefront the often missing female perspective. And one of the works that I wanted to mention is her work exploring the history of individual and collective resistance during the Holocaust and the important female figures of the resistance. And this is this is a work about individual and organized resistance of women during the Holocaust. The work itself is entitled Mechica. So she's exploring this idea of division of space in the synagogue and dividing men and women. And she's creating this actual Mechica with this textile. And she tells the story, often missing, forgotten stories of important female figures in the Jewish resistance during the Holocaust. And this is both a visual work, but also it's often accompanied by a talking performance by Susanna, bringing these histories back. And this was also presented in the POLIN Museum in Warsaw. So you can see here Susanna doing the performative part of the entire work. So as you can see, a lot of these works are both engaging with the past, but also like trying to either rethink it or critically engage with it, or simply just bring a very contemporary touch into the historical topics. And I wanted to end in a few minutes by saying a little bit about what have we learned throughout this year organizing the meetings of this network. So first of all, we were really surprised by how many people actually are showing up to these meetings, and how interested they are in continuing. And actually, I have to tell you that today I've just finished like a 2-day long meeting of the network, so a third meeting of the network. It was attended by, again, around 30 people. And it's an exhausting format. We start in the morning, we finish in the evening, and people just stay there, are engaged, they wanting to have a conversation, they are trying to find ways to collaborate with each other. So we see there is a huge need for such spaces for these artists and such collaborations. So this is something that we're committed to continue doing, to continue providing them with that space, securing funds necessary to be able to do that as 3 partner organizations, the Zapomniane Foundation, the POLIN Museum, and FestivALT. So first of all, we learned there is a need. We also learned that many of these people did not know each other before. So it was an opportunity, a first opportunity for them to be able to meet each other and see themselves as a group. And we already know that there are many collaborations developing now from that original meeting. What is also interesting is that we also noticed that after we announced this and we also published some of the bios of the artists on the festival website, we realized that some festivals and some institutions in Poland noticed that and invited these contemporary artists and to be part of their programs. And this is important because in many places in Poland there are different festivals or institutions dealing with Jewish culture, and oftentimes this is dealing with the historical Jewish culture, right? But thanks to the visibility of the artists from the network, this year many of these artists were invited to these festivals and to these institutions, and they were able to bring their contemporary perspective, which is so important if we want to think about present and the future of Jewish culture in Poland. And we also have learned that doing so little, and by little I mean really creating space. We didn't have much, big budgets for that at the beginning. It was rather modest, but this was enough for many new ideas, many new collaborations starting, and then being taken forward by these artists. And we also hope that maybe we are there to sort of like facilitate that. But we hope maybe, and we know some of the members of the network think about it, this will be taken over and self-governed by them, and we are very happy about that if that happens, because we see our role as like inviting them to do that, but this is a space for them and they can take that into the direction that they think is most useful for them. But what we also learned is that they now, as we observe the artists exchanging ideas, talking to each other, we see that there's so much potential, not only in the group itself, but also in fostering collaboration with various institutions in Poland and beyond, for this art to be featured, to be discussed, to be presented as something that is created here by people who are here, and also engaging with the tradition, the heritage, the legacy that is here. And some of the bios of the artists are already available on the website. Here is the link. I'm happy to share that with you. Not all of them, because we keep getting new people coming. So this will be further developed, and we hope maybe soon it will be also accompanied by portfolios of these artists. Now this is just bios and links to their websites. but also FestivALT conducted longer interviews with some of the artists. So in some cases, you can also learn more in depth about their practice, their interests, and where they are coming from. And this is a place where I wanted to end, and I hope we can continue talking. And I'm happy to answer all your potential questions or listen to your comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ola. I'm just going to jump right into questions because there are many. I will say people asked about specific artists and where can they find them online. So in the follow-up email, you'll receive not only the recording, but also links to everything. I agree, it's fascinating. And the first question was about, like, who do you consider eligible for the network? Who is a Jewish Polish artist? Does it have to do with their lineage, the themes they deal with in their art? What are your criteria for that?
So yeah, this was an important question that we were, trying to answer at the beginning. But what we did, we decided to make it very open. We invited artists who self-identify as Jewish, engaging in their art in some form with Jewish topics, but this can be, their own personal history, their own identity. It can be Jewish history, it can be Jewish heritage. So what is important is that these are people who are self-identify as Jewish, who create art that somehow also engages with that, with the topic of like either Jewish identity, Jewish history, Jewish heritage, Jewish tradition, so on and so forth. So so this is, and also, this is a recurring theme. So as you saw in one of the slides, there was a question, what is Jewish art? And this is an ongoing conversation. Nobody dares to say that they have a final answer to that question, but this is a theme that is coming up in many conversations. And we think this is really fruitful that we keep having these discussions.
So a follow-up question to that came up was, can you maybe characterize, or do you notice something that is unique to the Polish Jewish art and different from what, I know you travel a lot, so you've seen stuff in Israel, in the US and around Europe. Is there any characteristics, or are there any characteristic that you'd say this is unique to Polish Jewish art?
So, I mean, I wouldn't say it's very different. I wouldn't perceive that it's very different from the others, but definitely when we look at, for example, when we were doing the open call for the rotating gallery, many artists engage with not only the Holocaust itself and the memory of the Holocaust, but also the materiality of the Holocaust, because we are in East Central Europe. And the legacy of that is all around us, right? So it's, the landscape, the sites. So many artists engage with that memory, but in a very, let's say, I would say material way, like Alex Roth with the objects created of desecrated Torah scrolls, right? So I think the omnipresence of that difficult heritage is something that that is resonating with many of these artists. And I think this is very, I would say, specific to this geography, right? So the material legacies of violence, but also the material legacy of Jewish life before the war, because just to tell you, we have 1,200 Jewish cemeteries in Poland, countless architectural objects that used to be synagogues, mikvot, prayer houses, shtibels. This is everywhere. And this is also something that I think is very typical for this particular geography. And you see that coming up in many projects. But so I would say this is something that is significant. I wouldn't say it's, it's radically different, but I think it's significant.
Okay, thank you. Can you say a few words about like the size and make of the contemporary Jewish community in Poland, or maybe in Warsaw, and what denominations make of the network? Or is the general younger community reflected in the network, or is it divided denominationally?
No, so this is a difficult question in terms of that. The only knowledge we have about the size of the Jewish community in Poland is a public census. And according to the last public census, there is 15,000 people in Poland who self-identify as Jews. a bit over 15,000. But an interesting thing is that this is the census is constructed in a way that you can check different identities and you can choose other and then type what you want to type. So so these 15,000 are people who decided to make that effort. So and these might be people who are not part of any congregation, right? And an interesting thing about this census is that the previous census to that, the result was 7,000 Jews. So that means 100% increase over a couple of years. So this is interesting because obviously the census each time was constructed differently. So there is all that, but you can see that there are people who decide to self-identify. There are people who are part of Jewish congregation, of Jewish communities. And then there are many people who we call the fringes of the communities. So the people who are secular, who weren't usually raised Jewish, or or some of them only got to know about the fact that they are Jewish at some point of their lives, but they're looking for ways to reconnect with the culture, not necessarily, being part of any congregation. So and we do have people like that. So we have all sorts of people. So for example, over the last 2 days, we were organizing this gathering, and we had people who observe Shabbat. We have people who know very little about Jewish religion. We have people who are part of Jewish congregation. And in Warsaw itself, we have the Orthodox synagogue, the Reformed. We have there is Chabad as well. So there is all, and there's also like secular Jewish institutions of like more cultural profile like the JCC, for example. So some of the people we have in the network belong to, let's say, one of these, and some don't belong to any. But it's an interesting mix. But like the entire gathering was organized Shabbat friendly. So, as organizer, we are committed to accommodating all the needs, and this was accepted enthusiastically by all the people in the room, which also allowed us, to be inclusive and make sure that we accommodate all the needs.
Another question is twofold. One is, how much is it important for you to also outside of this community to the non-Jewish Polish public and beyond Poland to other Jewish communities? And with the other part.
So this is a great question, and actually we had earlier this afternoon we had a conversation about it with the members of the network, that on one hand they say they really enjoy being in such like Jewish spaces like the POLIN Jewish Museum or others, but they also said and they feel that they also want to make sure that they can be in both, right? That they can also be part of a wider, let's say, art scene or cultural scene. Some of them are, some of them not necessarily. And I think there are many reasons for that. But this is also why this time for the meeting, as part of the meeting, we organized a special networking sessions, and we invited people from various institutions and festivals to that session to meet the artists and to create an opportunity for them to meet each other. And these are people not only from Jewish institutions, but from institutions of all sorts of profiles interested in culture and arts. And when it comes to, so I would say yes, visibility beyond that, definitely. And also the art, this is something that the artists themselves say, many of them, that they would like to see more happening. And the other thing is visibility beyond Poland. Absolutely, we look for collaborations. For the second meeting, we collaborated with LABA, Laboratory of Jewish Culture hub in Barcelona, and they came to the meeting and conducted workshops. So we're looking for, and especially we're looking also for collaborations with similar networks, and we're aware of some of them, Dagesh in Germany, LABA in many places in Europe and beyond. So we're also looking at that, and we are in touch with people animating a network of Jewish artists in Hungary. So we're trying to go beyond Poland, definitely.
Thank you. I'm going to squeeze in a few more questions.
Yeah.
In terms of how, I'm sure you see how the non-Jewish public do interact with Jewish art. So if you can say a little bit about that, and if there are any changes within the cultural Polish scene since October 7th.
So I mean, there is huge interest in that, and you know, again, 10,000 people attending the anniversary of the POLIN Museum over one weekend and seeing the exhibition. That's a lot. So there is interest, and what I think is especially interesting is there is interest in smaller places, smaller towns, and this might sound unbelievable, but I mean, in many Polish towns and villages, there is at least a tiny Jewish culture festival. It might be one day, but there is an event, you know, and there are people who are usually memory activists who are looking for ways to, you know, to bring these topics into the public discussion. And we see that there is huge interest from these people in this type of art and bringing these artists. And definitely when it comes to, you know, how the conflict resonates, it definitely resonates differently here in Poland, and I would say probably in East Central Europe than in other places. But I would say, you know, the certain things are similar, like for example, you know, the how it resonates in the art world and in the might be similar in terms of, I think there is some decline in interest in presenting certain topics, but not, I wouldn't say complete. It's like you can see some decline or some reservations when it comes to engaging with these topics, but at the same time, many institutions do engage with them. And but I would say this is like more like a globalized, you know, phenomenon, sort of like being present also here or resonating here. While I would say there is like a vernacular, like a lower level or like, you know, local level where you can't see that much of the resonance.
Last question before we close. I think many people outside of Poland and maybe Eastern Europe, when they think of Poland, they do think of the past and of Holocaust and all of that. Is there like, do you have kind of something you want to say, like to have people kind of rethink the way they think about Poland and Warsaw and the contemporary Jewish life there?
So I would say there is a lot of interesting things happening here that are, I think, because of the fact that they are unobvious and people don't usually expect to find them here, they might be surprising. But I think there's a lot of, like, first of all, like activism by Jews and non-Jews around Jewish culture, Jewish topics, Jewish heritage especially, and many interesting and innovative formats of, like, you know, caring for the heritage side, because the scale of the heritage is enormous. I would say one of the most interesting things to see is to see how this manifests itself, and not only in Warsaw, which is obviously, you know, a big and vibrant capital city, but also in smaller towns and villages across Poland. And as a person who sometimes organizes study tours to Poland for people from abroad, I know that usually people who see that are really like impressed and surprised by, you know, the variety of formats in which this is happening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Please check out our November schedule. We have, it's really a delightful month coming up. And Ola, it was a pleasure to have you here. The follow-up email will include as many links as I can send about all the artists that we covered. Yeah, thank you everyone. Looking forward to
you.